I'd also like to say thank you for being here. Now, only the bad kids sit up the back, so you might want to come forward, because if you sit up the back, we might ask you questions. Just saying that out loud. That's the Australian way. Tell I'm not from around here. And in Australia, we ask the bad kids at the back the questions. So, without any further ado, let me introduce myself. My name is Jo Stewart-Rattray, and yes, I'm from the beautiful Clare Valley in South Australia, where we produce 1/5 of the world's wine. Yes, and I do have a vineyard. We produce niche red wine, a nice little Syrah. Having done that, having now done a little bit of advertising, I'm also the SheLeadsTech global founder of the program, and it gives me great pleasure to be here today in Vancouver, and I thank the chapter for inviting me to come. They're about to receive an award for the work they do with SheLeadsTech. I'm incredibly proud of them, and it kind of feels like they're all my babies. So thank you all for the work that you've done to empower women and girls, particularly encouraging those into the tech workforce. So today we're going to talk about some of the challenges that women face in the cyber world, and particularly when we're looking into the future. So in my day job, I'm a CISO with a large healthcare provider in Australia. We provide palliative care and hospital and home care, which is interesting. We have 4,500, I call them road warriors, but they're healthcare professionals, nurse clinicians, nurse practitioners, and other allied healthcare workers out on the road. So, and I think it's fair to say that a CISO never sleeps as a result. So, without lingering, I'd like my panel just to introduce themselves to you. There are 3 incredible women from BC that I have been having the great pleasure of chatting with and talking about things that we all hold dear. Golnaz, to you first.
My name is Golnaz. I'm an InfoSec officer in a financial firm in Vancouver. I started my career as an ethical hacker, and I did my years of consulting in a Big 4 company with this great lady here. You know, I have a background in computer science, got a PhD in computer science from U of T, and you know, I ended up being in cyber because I was probably good at computer science. And before having kids, I had lots of hobbies, but now my hobby is just playing with Legos and chasing garbage trucks.
Hi everybody, I'm Erica Pretorius. I'm a partner at Deloitte in the risk advisory team. I'm not the same person that's in your book, but happy to step in where we can. And I am also the Deloitte technology, media and telecommunications industry leader. So I spend a lot of time with companies in that sector, understanding the challenges that they have with security, compliance, privacy, and so forth. I've been in the industry a long time. I'm not going to say how long. I've got, and most of the time with Deloitte here in Canada, which has been phenomenal because we get to see everything that's going on and be at the forefront and work with very talented individuals like Golnaz, as well as a few people in the audience. And then I've also, on the home front, I have married with 2 kids, and they're very active, also keeps me busy, not a lot of time for hobbies.
Hi there, my name is Mandi Pano. I have done my bachelor, master in computer science and PhD from UK, Coventry University. I moved here in 2013. My husband is still questioning why you moved here, but I'm very happy here. I'm able to find a good job. Currently, I'm working at UFE as assistant professor in computer science. I think if you heard in the morning presentation, computer science, cybersecurity, all the concern and everything. But for UFE, I'm taking care of their second and third and fourth year cybersecurity courses. I also work at KPU. We do some good research, and we are also kind of doing a good number of cybersecurity courses as well. Thank you very much. Cheers.
My esteemed colleagues, absolutely. One of the things that we've discovered in the ISACA Tech Workforce 2020 survey is that there is actually a gender perception gap. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you ask the same question of a man and you ask the same question of a woman in relation to the tech workforce, you are likely to get two different answers. So I found that really interesting, so I encourage you to go look at that survey, because some of the questions that I asked today are as a result of the work that we did with that survey. The other thing that I guess I'm just going to throw out there, that I threw out in a session this morning, is that none of us on the stage are prepared for what Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, has said in his International Women's Day speech last year, that it is possible that his granddaughters' will be the ones that will have gender equity across the board in the workplace and economically and in education across the world. Now, if you've done the math, that's 200 years just about. And I don't think any of us are prepared to wait for that. So I'll just throw that out there. So it is a real thing. I'm going to ask you all, this is a question for everybody. Not everybody's going to answer every question. I'm going to ask you, what are some of the personal experiences or indeed compelling arguments that have influenced your thinking around gender and diversity in the workplace? I think, Golnaz, do we want to go first? Yeah, go on.
Start, sure. Being in cybersecurity, I have been to a lot of meeting rooms that I have been the only female participating in a technical conversation. And in my early years of career, that made me feel the imposter syndrome, that do I belong here? Now I know I belong there. But then I have observed throughout my career that women, to belong, they either try to act like men, or they try to do it by themselves and alone to show strength. But the business has changed. It's a team sport, and we want all backgrounds and all genders, they participate. There are study after study that are showing that women are really good in leadership because they're more passionate, they show more empathy, they are more engaged with their staff, and so they make really good leaders, especially in environments that they value this kind of demeanor. So my personal experience has been that I have seen some very successful female leaders that are true to who they are. They don't need to act like men, and that's what I inspire to be and embrace who I am. And the only way for women to shorten that 200 years is to basically get into technical fields, get into high positions of powers, and break the barriers for the rest of women to get in.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I think when I had a couple kind of key turning points. One of it was when I read the book Lean In from Sheryl Sandberg. It's probably 10 years ago now, it's quite a while ago. But I think up to that point, I had my own experience in leadership, in IT and cyber as well. But I didn't feel like those were necessarily shared experiences. I thought, oh, I'm the one that feels like the imposter. Nobody else is feeling like that. And when I read the book, I realized how much of it was common across all women. And we were really hamstrung here ourselves. Like, we were not putting our hands up for promotions when we actually deserved it. And if you don't ask, you don't get, where the other colleagues were doing things like that. So I really started looking at myself, like, how can I empower my own success? And then as I've had kind of in my career more women reporting to, or diverse workforce reporting to me, many different cultures, many both genders, I did realize that there's definitely specific differences between how women and men would approach salary negotiations, asking for promotions, taking on new exciting engagements, or something that's maybe out there, or even making mistakes. There were so many different ways that women were just not putting themselves forward, even if they deserve it. I remember I had one example where one of my senior consultants at the time, that it was a few years back when there was a bit of a dip in the economy, and she was like, oh, I just don't want to be let go. And I'm like, I would let myself go before I let you go. Like, you are the best employee I've ever had. And it was just those type of things made me realize that we have to have a bigger conversation. It has to be more out there Because if we just internalize it, we're not going to we're almost our own worst enemy.
You know, it's interesting. I had a transgender woman working with me on a project, and she talked about the differences that she had experienced in technology as a man and as a woman. And she said the interesting thing was when she made that move across and she changed jobs at the time, she made her full gender change. And she said for the first time she was treated as though she had 50% less brain, less capability as Karen than as when she was Kevin. So I thought that was a really scary thought. So, and she had been fighting the gender fight ever since. So I say, hail to Karen. So thank you, Mandeep.
I can share my own example. When I was doing my bachelor, we have 200 students and only 8 of them are women. In master, we have 175, I think 6 or 7. And when I was doing PhD, that was kind of you're working differently. So I can see definitely one thing for sure when we talk about the diversity, inclusiveness, I think we should encourage women as early as possible from schools, because this is very, very important. Because most of women or girls think that the technical field is not for them. Might be that was one of me as well, because we are more thinking about we are more comfortable in arts and music, but not anymore. I'm talking about 2006 and 7 and 8. Now more and more women we can see in the higher role as long as in the cybersecurity as well. I think that is very, very important. But for example, computer science, we are always like to encourage more and more women, but I think early age is very, very important. Sometimes they're already established, they're kind of too scared to change their field and everything. I think that's kind of important as well. Thank you.
I mean, the other issue there too is, as we spoke about last night, Mandeep, is the fact that I was speaking to a lovely young woman in Ireland who just finished her first year in Comp Sci at the University of Dublin. And when talking to her, she said that she was fine. She was in a tutorial group of 40 students and she was the only one of 2 females. She came from a family of 5 boys in herself, so she was cool. But her colleague, another young woman, said that she felt that she was overwhelmed by, you know, the hoodies and perhaps young men who hadn't washed often enough and were sort of a bit geeky and a bit testosterone driven. And so she actually dropped out before the middle of the 2nd semester as a result. So it really is about women encouraging young women to go into those fields, I think. So what's motivated all of you in your own ways have become involved in advocating for change? This is what we're really talking about this afternoon. So I guess what was the motivator for you? Mandeep,
I can start this question from. For example, I'm working as a professor, so I'm dealing with a really diverse population, like not only in terms of like gender, but in terms of like religion and all sort of like international national students as well. I can give you one example. Like I think 2016, one of my students, she was almost around 38-year-old. She was finishing her diploma, and she asked me, Mandeep, I'm about to kind of like going to be 40 in 2 years. So what do you think? Can I pursue my bachelor, or can I kind of like finish? I said like I don't feel like kind of like studying anymore because I'm like already 40 and I also have a job as well. So I asked her, I said, anyway, you're turning 40, the choice is yours. You want to turn with the degree or without the degree, the choice is yours, right? So I'm kind of like, because sometimes people need a little bit encouragement, because sometimes the background where they come from, because they are very satisfied and they think that technical role and those roles are not for them. That's a possibility. So anyway, as example, she have completed her bachelor and now she's working in a cybersecurity in Vancouver, like a big company, and I'm really happy for her. The other thing is, like, in terms of, like, I mentioned earlier, like the technical skills, because we think that these, like, cybersecurity, computer science field are not for us. I think this is very, very important to influence young women, or like how they can enter in the career, encouragement and early education, and sometime in the leadership role. have seen I'm working with the ISACA as well as IEEE as well, because sometimes we can provide women like the opportunity to participate where they don't have anything to lose because sometimes they're afraid of. I think that's also a great opportunity if they're working in the leadership role as a volunteer, or that can give us a lot of experience and encouragement. All those kind of things are quite helpful for them as well. Yeah, you want to add on something?
Who's next?
I think where I really kind of became more involved is when I saw the value of diversity, and gender diversity is one aspect which we're focusing on today, but I think in general the diversity and the value that brings to teams. At Deloitte, we have at our manager level, everybody goes through what we call business chemistry training, and it's really a global training that our team go through to understand different personality types and how people show up at work. And when we went through that training, it really emphasized that the value that each different personality type brings to a team. And one of the examples that there was there is you've got people that are drivers that are really like, just let's get to the end and as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible. You have people with bright ideas, maybe not as driven, but tons of ideas. You have people that are very risk averse, and then you have people that are really integrating. They're integrating people, the relationships, making sure everybody's on the same page before we move forward. And when we went through those training, you realize that there are kind of a disproportionate of people that might be on the driver's side or might be on the guardian side from a risk management point of view. But our type of business, you don't have a lot of people that are that are naturally on the integrator side that are like, let's have a conversation about this, let's understand, make sure everybody's on the same page. And when we bring more diverse personalities, which often then include more women into the workforce, that is one area where we can really round out teams. So you actually get to a much better solution at the end. You may not get there as fast as the drivers want, but you actually bring everybody along with you when you get to a point where the team functions more better, clients are happier, and everybody actually gets to a much better place.
Excellent, thank you for that. I liked your idea around diversity. You know, we do have to look at diversity in all its forms. You know, we need to be inclusive. And I think that's a really important point, that diversity gives us diversity of thought. And the only way you get diversity of thought is being an inclusive leader, looking to include people in the discussion. So thank you for that, ladies. So I'll go on to our next question, which is, let's talk about some of the practicalities about being an advocate. So in what ways have you advocated for change? And if you can, tell us about both successes and perhaps challenges that you've faced.
Maybe I'll jump in on that one because I think I've got a really good, very recent example. This past year, I kicked off a special project within our risk advisory campus recruiting team. We were looking at the types of candidates, our postings, what we put out nationally. There was a little differences kind of in each region. We were looking at what type of skills we're asking for, and then we were comparing that to our business. As you kind of would do on an annual basis, on a normal annual basis, but I basically had a team, and we pulled everything together from a national point of view and said, let's look at all of this, let's compare what we can have. And we found Vancouver, I think because we're a little smaller market, but we're also very entrepreneurial, we actually had much more diverse candidates come through. We had better gender balance than the rest of the country, and we looked at why we had that. And one of the things was looking at our postings and the type of education that we were asking for, and we actually had quite a few options for people. We didn't just hire CPA students. We were looking for MIS students. We were looking for computer science students, and we were our postings had language in them which was open to other BCom specializations as well. We then also looked at how our hire, once we got the resumes in, what's our process and so forth. Based on all of this, we then revamped our postings to be a lot more open. So we changed the language to not ask for specific skills, because I'm sure a lot of people have seen some of the stats of, women would look if there's 10 requirements in a job description, she would look that she meets at least 8 before she applies. Men might look and say, I have 4 of those, I'm going to apply. So we took some of the technical jargon out of the description. We made the postings, the educational requirements a lot more open. And then we also looked at adding personas. So now that we weren't having people apply to, I am the MIS student, I'm going to apply to this, or I'm the CPA student, I'm going to apply to this. We created personas that actually explained what you would do on a day-to-day basis. So one of it was the interpreter. If you are interested in technology and business and you want to be that link between those two, click this persona. If you are more on the technical side and you love details and getting into the nitty-gritty of things, here's the Guardian, click this one. So we actually had phenomenal success. We went from, our Toronto office was the first one that used this new system. They went from getting 400 resumes to getting 1,000 resumes. Which caused a bit of other problems because our processes wasn't quite built for dealing with screening 1,000 resumes. But I think the other piece we did as well is looked at the bias that there might be in the interview process. So what we did is we included a standard list of questions. Anybody that made it to an in-person interview had to be asked these 10 questions, and you can ask a follow-up question, but you have to cover those 10. We also included a case study, so you could evaluate more broader thinking, not just how the person shows up in the interview. And we added a little video interview, so you've asked just to get through the 1,000 down to a more manageable point where people had to answer 3 questions via video. So through like a multi-pronged approach, we try to get as much more a diverse group in, but also filter them and screen them in a way that that took out that individual bias.
That's an interesting point. And I think, Mandeep, were you going to speak about this one too?
No,
No, you're good with that one? All right. Golnaz, you're all right with that too? All right, excellent. Just want to give you an opportunity, ladies. I think the other interesting point about taking bias out of recruitment is that it's not just gender bias that we're talking about here. We're talking about bias. And one of the things that I've done is to ask HR, and I'm not popular with HR as a result, to have the first round completely blind. So no gender, no nationality, no names of universities, just the degrees that people have done. So it's quite a bit of work for them to do that, to boil it down to the point where, there's no photographs. So it's candidate 1 or it's, whatever. And so you go through it and you actually go through it in a different process because you have no idea who this person might be, whether it's a young woman or a young man. And it really is, then you're really looking at non-biased and merit-based selection. Of course, when you get to the next round, which is generally a face-to-face interview, then you are going to obviously know that candidate 1 was a young woman and candidate 2 was a young man. Or candidate 5 was from Iran and candidate 6 was from Australia. So, but it takes that first round bias out because we all have biases, whether we like it or not. So, as I say, I'm not popular with HR for asking for that, but to me it has made a difference in the way we recruit. So, given the changing environment that we're working in, how do you think that the use of disruptive technologies will affect women in the workforce? I'm going to ask you this one, Golnaz.
I think the disruptive technology that are coming, or some already here, like cloud, IoT, automation, AI, blockchain, genome editing, they will change our lives for better. They also shift the workforce. They will replace a lot of low-value, low-paying jobs with automation. And unfortunately, study after study shows that those are mostly jobs occupied by women. So that means we're gonna even force more women into more less value jobs, And then these kind of disruptive technologies, they come with a demand of many STEM-related careers, a lot of job openings. I think a lot of stats show in 2-3 years, there are going to be at least 3 million cyber jobs only open in the world that can't be filled. And all of these disruptive technologies come with high demands of security, privacy, and ethics. And who's going to fill them? So there is an opportunity here that women step up and we facilitate their entry into STEM and technology fields, or they're gonna miss another wave, and these jobs are gonna be, and these are high-paying jobs, very interesting, and they're gonna be filled with men. So we have very short time, I think, to fill the talent gap. And companies go to various lengths to hire and steal from each other or go to remote offices. However, the solution is closer to home. It's here. And it's to train, engage, bring more women into technology, I think, ASAP. Also, I think it's our jobs as women and everyone's to go back to core to culture and education and start from homes, because these are the little girls that we are not giving them the opportunities from day one to become confident enough to enter high-tech workforce. I always argue why we have tiara and princess stuff and tea parties, toys for girls, and we give the Legos and then the blocks to boys. They all should be gone. There should be just a kid section in toy shop. So yeah, I hope that the new wave of this disruptive technology come and we get on board with it instead of being forced out.
I personally like a good tiara, but I have to say I'd equally be happy with some Lego. There's an interesting point in that too, Golnaz, and that's that the Peterson Institute tells us that there's currently $13 trillion US, yes, I'll repeat that, $13 trillion being left on the table by corporations who are not looking at gender equity in the tech workforce in particular. That's a big number. So you're right, we have a limited period of time to actually get something happening for the next generation. Sorry, Erica, over to you.
No, absolutely. I'll add on to what Golnaz is saying. I think if I look at the specific disruptive technologies like AI and machine learning, I think, and some of our speakers echoed it this morning, those tools are going to free up some of the deep technical skills that are already kind of in the workforce, or there's not enough of in the workforce, to more other jobs that are more requiring collaboration and between the security team, the IT team, the business. I think one of the examples this morning was when you're dealing with a breach, there's a technical component to it, but there's a big component which is actually you need to get a lot of people in a high-stress environment onto the same page. And I think as we're looking to bring more women into the workforce, it's not that you're going to get away from the technical requirement, but I think some of the softer skills are going to be as high, if not a higher value team member than maybe historically we had the programmers and the individuals that were very set on their deep technical skills and maybe didn't want to collaborate that much. They were the gods in the IT and security realm, and I think we'll see a shift in that, which would be very, very beneficial for women. I think the second piece to that, there's the one piece of bringing women in, there's also keeping women in the tech workforce. And I think if you are valuing the collaboration aspect and some of the softer skills of the jobs more, some of the individuals that may be creating toxic cultures in IT and security teams, their skills may not outweigh that toxicity that they bring anymore. So you may actually end up with a better culture, which will help hopefully women stay in tech and security and IT longer.
Yeah, that's a good point about retention as well, and we'll talk a bit more about that. Mandeep.
I can add a little bit. For example, when I'm teaching with my student, even when we talk about technology changing, not only for women, for men, everybody, we have to cope it up, right? Because I have to change my lecture notes, my labs, my tutorial every single semester. So that's kind of we have to. Even I think we are working with IoT, blockchain, and dark web and the others. I think the research students are working with me, 5 of them are women, and they're doing wonderful. Dark Web and the other project. So it's kind of, as long as we encourage them, train them early age, and build that confidence, I think that's going to be quite helpful for everybody. Yeah. Thanks, yeah.
Great. So to that, just to sort of adding on to that a bit, how do we encourage women to aspire to leadership roles? Right, we've gotten them into the workforce, we've done all of that encouragement. We've got male allies out there assisting us. They're our champions where we need them to be and working in collaboration with them. But now how do we encourage women to stand up for leadership roles?
I can start that question. To be honest, it's kind of confidence, the lack of confidence sometimes have it, and encouragement in workplaces. And sometimes we think that some certain roles are only for men. That is very common. I have seen it. I can give you one small example, like especially technical or like the role. When I came here in Canada 2013, and I was teaching my 4th year course, and I asked students, okay, we are going to build up the server, and we are going to do kind of, I will provide you how to connect with VPN and everything. The other thing I'm talking about, because we have now diverse culture and they're coming from all over the world and everything, sometimes they don't see women as a leader, as kind of like giving them instruction and everything. And I asked them to install something, and they know how to install simple VirtualBox and Kali and the other. They asked me, can you show us how to do it? I said, like, this is just downloading the software. It's not difficult. No, can you show us how to do it? I just, like, we spent extra session. I just did go through with them and everything. Then I just, how to connect VPN and everything. And then they said, oh, you know how to do the stuff. I said, like, I have the same bachelor and, like, the master and PhD. How come I don't know? So sometimes it's the culture, but I think encouragement, like a bit encouragement, encouraging them, like building the confidence. And in terms of sometimes culturally, some culture, like the women's are only for, I think, more for like the roles which are more soft and like different type of roles. The technical and the other, we don't see the women doing it. Like, I'm not talking about only in Canada, because now Canada is a diverse, right? We have all sort of people we are sharing the land with, right? So we have to be, so that's why when we're encouraging women to the leadership role, I think early age is very important, building the confidence and encouragement. And kind of, if they're doing something good, just celebrating together as a team. And sometimes even as a women, we just forget to celebrate our peers as well. So that's kind of very, very important. In, I think, ISACA, we have a chapter, and in IEEE, we have women chapter as well. So we celebrate, I think, when we are doing good, and we're also encouraging young girls and women. So I think that's very, very important for all of us, yeah. Thank you. You want to add on?
I think the one thing that I certainly see make a big difference is your own home life. Like, and Golnaz and I had a great conversation just before that, is if your significant other is supporting you in your leadership development, then that makes a huge difference. If you are expected to be the primary caregiver for your children, if you're expected to be the primary caregiver for aging parents or any other kind of family commitment you have, it is very hard to then, as an individual, to say, oh, okay, I want to give 100% to everybody at home that needs me. Now I'm also going to commit to something bigger at the office and do that. Like, nobody wants to disappoint the people they respect at work and the people that love them at home. So how do you make that balance? And I think if you, I've been on similar panels like this before, and one was for high school students, and I said basically, I think if you want to excel in your career, one of the most important decisions you need to make is, who is your life partner? Who will they support you in this, and will they see the kind of and support your dreams? And if you don't have that, I think it becomes a lot tougher, because it's still as a default, I would say, falls to women to take care of everything, of things at home, unless it's a very concerted effort that's being made. So that's a big piece, I think, that stands in the way. And then the other piece is just being kind of upfront at work with, are there other commitments and how much can you take on? And sometimes what is sad for me sometimes, if women don't even have the conversation, just opt out. They're like, oh, I don't think I can manage it. As opposed to, no, you're already hitting everything out of the park. If you dial back 20%, you're still probably fantastic at it. So don't opt out, don't opt yourself out. Have that conversation before you make a big decision.
I think you're right. One of the issues that I see is that women will also conversely just keep taking on because they think they have to. They think that's what a leader must do, or someone who's aspiring to leadership. Well, being in the office until 10 o'clock every night actually doesn't necessarily make a difference. It's the output that's the important thing. I really like your point about who is your life partner. I mean, I couldn't have done the things that I've done without a very supportive husband who is a professional musician and decided to go off the road after 25 years as a working, touring musician to support me. So he now works locally. He does a lot of amazing stuff remotely through the use of technology. But without that support, and he literally has probably become more of a feminist than I am. I know you find that hard to believe. But he is a creative type, just remember that. But seriously, I couldn't do it without. So, and I'm sure you're in a similar situation. Would you like to add something to that, Golnaz, or not? You don't have to. You're good? You're good, all right. Okay. Moving on. So, Erica mentioned earlier that about retaining women, and that's a thing that really concerns me, is that we get women to a point where they put their hand up, they're leaders, and they're about to do the thing that I believe is the most important thing that a woman ever does, to give birth to and raise the next generation. How do we keep women beyond that point? Yeah, not now. Sorry, baby, I think she's 8 months.
So, yes, second baby, 5 weeks. Last time I went on maternity leave, I took about 10 months. And in Canada, the norm is 12 months, and thanks to the Liberal government, is now 18 months. So you can enjoy that. So 12 to 18 months in some industries and in some companies is not a lot of change. In the industry I am and in the company I am, if I come back 18 months and I'm completely off the grid, they probably find a new infosec because I'm completely out of my depth and I'm not on top of my game anymore. 2 of my actually co-workers are here. They're gonna be much better than me in 18 months. So especially in cyber field. So that's why, I choose not to go for 18 months. And this time around, my husband is actually switching with me to actually, because he's respecting my career. He's he thinks there's a lot of value in me growing my career. So I'm going back in 9 months. And I still think that's a long time to be away in a technical field. I wish daycare, occasional childcare was more available, so I could go part-time a day or half a day each week to just keep pulse on the change and what's happening. So, I know someone in our firm, she was in very high leadership position and she came back after 3 months. Got a nanny. She felt there is no other option. However, there is another option. The men, they cannot stay at home. And I don't see, besides breastfeeding, I don't see any material difference between the care a dad can provide and a mother can provide. So I encourage all men here, that you are here, take active participation in raising and bearing children. It's not only our job, women.
That's a really good point. And we're seeing it more, certainly in Australia, we're seeing more men taking paternity leave, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think it's always going to be tough, whether you're taking the time out for maternity leave or some people take sabbaticals and stuff. Things change, technology change, and then in our business, which is a lot of it is relationship build, people move on, they change companies and so on. So you're coming back. I took 12 months each time with my children, although with the second one I could have probably come back after 6 because I was a little bored at home. Bored, frustrated, or at my wit's end. But I think for us, if it's a bit of pre-planning helps. There's a technology, like I said, technology aspect to it. There's a relationship aspect to it. So, but you also come back a different person. You have a lot more. I certainly had a lot more empathy with people and commitments that they have outside of work after I had children. Before I was like, what do you mean you can't work till 10 at night to get that file done? And then I'm like, oh yes, because you didn't sleep, you're not going to sleep the rest of the night because your child is sick and so on. So I think it makes you a much more well-rounded person as well. So as you'll connect with your colleagues, you'll connect with clients and so forth a lot differently, and actually in a lot of cases a lot better afterwards. So I think there are trade-offs, but the technology part is a little tough. I know I almost lost my CISSP because my mat leave year overlapped with my certification year, so I had to scrounge around for my 40 hours of technical training. So I think just finding little ways to keep up to date on your time off, I think is probably the best way of looking at it.
And certainly SheLeadsTech is looking to do that with webinars, etc. So that's a great point. I know that we're running short of time, so I'd like to thank my panellists. And before you start clapping, I'm actually going to do a quick wrap-up of what I heard. Might not necessarily be what they said or what you heard. It's what I heard. One of the things I heard was that we need to celebrate success and women need cheer squads. Yay. One of the things that I found was talking about today, we're talking about confidence. Women need more confidence. I'm going to suggest after the panel or the fireside chat I had earlier, was we should be encouraging young girls and young women to join Girl Guides. My Lord, the programs that they offer now to give confidence to young girls I think is brilliant. We do need to take the bias out of recruitment. It's got to be fair for both men, women, and regardless of cultural background or language background. So we are seeing a change in culture, though, in some respects. Women can do hardcore tech, which is a change in thinking, but there's a long way to go as far as Mandeep and I are concerned on that one. Still a long way to go. My writing is so bad. And, you know, I heard from all the panellists either today or last night when I was talking to them that so often we've been the only woman in the room. We need to encourage more lipstick and heels into boardrooms, right? Because God forbid they need them. Successful female leaders are not necessarily have the same attributes as male successful leaders, and we have to acknowledge that. As each individual in the room, we're different. For however many people there are here, we would have that many opinions, and so that's not a gender thing at all. We need to encourage women from early on, from kids, to ensure that they have a decent respect for the tiara, but they have a decent respect for Meccano and Lego as well. And the other thing is, you know, one of the things that I thought was a great message from Erica was, give it a go. Mandeep said the same thing. Give it a go. What do we have to lose? You know, give it a go. And one last thing was, I reckon that the world would be a better place with more tutus. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, everyone.